L. This one is a doozy. It probably looks a little intimidating, and this is, I think, probably the hardest one that we're going to do as we go through the problem. But that being said, we can do it. We just have to be persistent and patient and do each part individually and take care for each part. So we're going to do this by implicit differentiation. So we're going to have 3 derivatives set up. So let's just do each derivative on its own whiteboard here and then put all those together. So the first one is going to be the square root of x divided by y, and the square root goes over the whole thing. So what you'll notice for this one is that we have an inside part, and so this is the inside, and the inside is x divided by y. But in order to find the derivative of the inside, we have to use the quotient rule because this itself is a division. So the inside, x divided by y, we use the quotient rule, and so we get the derivative of the top, which is 1, times the bottom, which is y, minus the top, which is x, times the derivative of the bottom, and the derivative of the bottom is y prime, all divided by y squared. So this is the derivative of the inside. What about the outside? The outside is square root of x, or if we like, we could write it as an x to the 1/2. And so the derivative of square root of x is 1/2 x to the negative 1/2. So when I put these together, I get that my derivative for this thing is the derivative of the inside, y minus x y prime, divided by y squared, times my derivative of the outside, 1/2 x divided by y to the negative 1/2. Wow, there's a lot going on in this problem, and that's just the first step. So let's write that down for our first derivative. So this first part is y minus x y prime all over y squared times 1/2 x divided by y to the negative 1/2. All right, and now we'll put a plus sign, and let's come tackle the second part. So the second part is sine of y over x. All right, sine of y over x. Well, this one is going to be really similar to what we did a second ago. We have an inside, which is right here, and we'll have to take its derivative first because we'll have to do a chain rule. So the derivative is y over x, and to do the derivative of the inside, we'll have the derivative of the top, which is y prime, times the bottom, which is x, minus the top, which is y, times the derivative of the bottom, which is 1, all divided by the bottom squared, so we've got x squared. Now here our outside is sine of x, and so that derivative is just cosine of x. So what's our answer going to be? Well, our answer is going to be the derivative of the inside, which is y prime, let's do it in black. So our answer is going to be y prime x minus y divided by x squared times cosine, and then you have to put the inside back in, so cosine of y over x. So this is what we get for that second part. So let's write it down. Y prime x minus y, all divided by x squared times cosine of y over x. Now we've got equal, and we've got to do the part on the far right, which is 1 over y squared. So now the last piece to take care of is 1 over y squared. And how do I get to do this? You could do a quotient rule. If so, you'll get a derivative of 0. I think the easiest thing is to realize that this is a y to the negative 2. And so the derivative of that is going to be negative 2y to the negative 3 y prime. And it's going to make our life a little bit easier if we write it negative 2 divided by y cubed times y prime. I think that's just going to help us just a little bit. So what I'm going to write is I'm going to write over here negative 2 divided by y cubed times y prime. All right, now we're ready for what might be the hardest task in this problem, and that is solving this for y prime. First thing, if you're able to get this derivatives written out correctly, you've done a really good job. So well done. That's a pretty big accomplishment. It tells me that you understand all your derivative rules. You understand how to put them together. You understand how implicit differentiation works. So you're doing great. Now let's try to tackle the algebra here. My first step for this algebra is going to be to get rid of all the fractions. I guess we don't have to do this step, but it sure seems like a really good step. So how am I going to get rid of all the fractions? Well, I noticed that I have a denominator of y squared, x squared, and y cubed. So what if I just multiply everything by y cubed x squared? And so I'll multiply this by y cubed x squared, multiply this by y cubed x squared, and multiply this by y cubed x squared. And what you'll see is that all my denominators will cancel, and I'll have just a few things left over. So this first part, I will have y minus xy prime, and my y squareds cancel, and I'm left with just a single y x squared. And then I've got 1/2 x over y to the negative 1/2. Okay, this one, my x squareds cancel, and I've got y prime x minus y times y cubed cosine of y over x. And I ran out of space, but that's okay. And so over here, my y cubes cancel, and I'm left with negative 2 x squared y prime. Okay, well that was a little bit of a mess, but not unbearable. We can keep going. So the next thing I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to get this rec and simplify it, but the only way to do it is to distribute. This looks a little messy, but this whole thing here gets multiplied by both of those terms. Similarly, this whole thing here gets distributed by both of these terms. I have to distribute because that's the only way I'm going to be able to separate out my x's and y's. Oh wait, this was an xy prime. I don't know what I wrote earlier. Okay, it was just that term, just rewritten. Okay, so I distribute them out, and let's see what I get. So the very first thing I get is y times y x squared times 1/2 x divided by y to the negative 1/2 minus xy prime y x squared 1/2 x divided by y to the negative 1/2. Wow, so I've only written out the first term, and I'm already out of space, and so I need to move down to another line, and now I multiply that here. So we've got y prime x times y cubed cosine y over x minus, and I'm going to multiply it here, y times y cubed cosine y over x. And now we've got equals, and then the other side, fortunately, is just the same thing that we had earlier. All right. Let me rewrite this one more time. I'm going to see if I'm just going to rewrite it, just kind of grouping some things that are similar together. So look, so it looks like that first term is y squared x squared times. Here, tell you what, let's put the 1/2 out front. I like a 1/2 out front instead of on the side. So 1/2 x squared y squared. I've got 2 x's and 2 y's. And then we've got x divided by y to the negative 1/2 minus, here we've got 3 x's, so we've got a 1/2 x cubed y, and then we have a y prime, and then an x over y to the negative 1/2. This one, it looks like we've just got x y cubed with a y prime cosine y over x, and then finally here it looks like I've got a y to the 4th cosine y over x equals negative 2 x squared y prime. Now I've got to do the thing that I always do, and that is I have to take everything with a y prime. So here's a y prime, here's a y prime, and here's a y prime, and I have to move them all to the same side of the equal sign. So I'm just going to add, 2x squared y prime over to the other side. And then I have to take the things without a y prime, and it looks like that's this, and I have to move them to the other side of the equal sign. So I will subtract that and add that onto the other side. Okay. If you are keeping up right now, I am proud of you. This is a challenging problem, and if you find this a little bit overwhelming, you're normal. There's nothing wrong with you. But that being said, we do the really hard problems because we see how we can take something that's very complicated, put it into small, easy chunks, and do each of those little chunks one at a time. But this algebra is a little bit messy. Okay, so let's rewrite. So what have I got? I've got this, and this all on the left side. So I've got a 1/2 x cubed y, y prime, x over y to the negative 1/2 plus x y cubed y prime cosine y over x plus 2x squared y prime, and that is equal to the other pieces. So it's equal to a negative 1/2 x squared y squared x over y to the negative 1/2 plus y to the 4th cosine y over x. All right, now what do we have to do next? What we have to do next is factor out our y prime. So I've got y prime times all of that. And tell you what, let's cheating. How about if I cheat factor it, because I don't want to write everything out again. I'll cheat factor it, put the y prime here, and then delete, delete, delete. And all I did was factor all those y primes out. Now the only thing left is to actually write out my answer. And that is y prime equals all of this over here, all of this over here, divided by all of this over here. So my answer is negative 1/2 x squared y squared x divided by y to the negative 1/2 plus y to the 4th, that's supposed to be a 4, cosine y over x divided by 1/2 x cubed y x over y to the negative 1/2 plus xy cubed cosine y over x plus 2x squared. And if you got that or something that's equivalent to that, you are ready to go. I should probably just stop and just give you an A for the course right now. We should probably just be done. But unfortunately, we can't do that. We'll keep going. But you are really on top of everything if you got that. So just for fun, let's look at all of the whiteboards that we had all the way through. Here's all of our whiteboards all the way up to the beginning. So that was a serious problem, and well done.